All right, looks like we're recording. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to the Core Cycle 10 Aviation Review Committee meeting where the ARC members will get the scored core applications and put together the list of recommended projects for the State Aviation Board. So I'm Andrea Abrahamson, and I'm a program coordinator with the core program. And I'm going to go ahead and we've got a short presentation. I'm going to pop that up and then I will turn it over to Shelley Humble, our ARC chair, for just a few opening words. So give me just one moment. And also just to mention, only ARC members and ODAF staff have access to their camera and microphones. This is a public meeting, but there's no public comment taken here. If there is anyone on who would like to make a public comment, you can submit that for the State Aviation Board meeting that will be held February 5th, 2026. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to send an email over to grants@odav.oregon.gov, and I'll have that email up in our presentation as well. All right, so hopefully you can see the start of the presentation there. And then just a snapshot of our agenda. And Shelley, if you are ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Andrea. Welcome, ARC members. It's great to see so many new faces. Several of us have been here more than once, but I welcome all the new ones. This is a great grant funding opportunity for airports in the state of Oregon. And I'm very appreciative of the staff who work hard every year to ensure that the process is smooth, easy to access for smaller airports who may not have staff, and available to anyone who is willing to take a little bit of time to apply for a grant to better their airport. I appreciate that. With that, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself. I am Shelley Humble. My day job is the Crestwell Airport Manager, 77 Sierra. I am represented on the ARC by the Lane Act, Lane Area Transportation Commission. I am another stakeholder in aviation. At this time, I'd like to declare that I could have a potential conflict of interest should a discussion at the ARC meeting need to take place for the Crestwell Airport grant applications. Any discussions, grants, tie-breaking, any moving up and down on the list. The potential conflict of interest is due to Viper Aviation, an aircraft maintenance business owned by my husband, Darren Humble, located on the Crestwell Airport. This potential conflict is only for the above stated scenario. Once I declare this potential conflict of interest, I am still ethically able to discuss and vote regarding the discussion as per core reviewers policy and ORS 319.020 section 3B 2.3 statutory review 2.3.1 conflict of interest disclosure. And with that, we'll go ahead and Adrian, if you want to call people to introduce themselves, I'd appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you, Shelley. All right, so we'll just start next. Oh, and actually very quickly, before we start that, I did want to mention that Commissioner Kevin Cameron was our rep from the Mid-Willamette Valley Act. And while he was available and the meeting was scheduled, he unfortunately ended up with a conflict, so he's not here. And then just right before this meeting, I did receive a message from Barry Murphy, the city manager out of Baker City, who was an ARC member, and he had a family emergency come up, so he is not able to make the meeting either. So both of them are excused, and we'll start our next ARC member introductions with Betsy Johnson.
Good. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Betsy Johnson. I was for 21 years a member of the Oregon legislature representing Northwest Oregon, commercial fixed wing and helicopter pilot. I ran a commercial helicopter operation for 20 years at the Scappoose Airport. And given the chair's recusal, I filled out the no conflict with respect to the Scappoose Airport. And out of an abundance of caution, I think I ought to state for the record that my husband is the FBO at Scappoose. When I filled out the conflict, I couldn't imagine how a piece of pavement improvement would financially benefit me or my family directly. I still feel that way, but I at least want to put on the record that my husband is the FBO at Scappoose.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. And this is Betsy's first year on our Aviation Review Committee, and we're glad to have her here. Next, I'll go with Haley.
Hi, I'm Haley Walker. I'm the airport manager over in Grant County. This is round 10 of core grants for me, so excited to be here. And also would like to fill out the form and officially declare a conflict of interest for the Burns Municipal Airport and the Christmas Valley Airport.
Perfect. Thanks, Haley. Next, Jason Snyder.
Hi, Jason Snyder. I'm a county commissioner in Washington County representing Region 1 Act, and no conflicts I know of.
Perfect. Thank you. And all of our ARC members did submit their conflict of interest forms before this meeting as well. So we appreciate that. Next, we'll go with Jeff.
I'm Jeff Bernard. I am a contract airport manager for both the Hood River and the Dalles airports, and I do not have any declared conflicts at this point.
Next, we have Jennifer Letts.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Letts. I'm the mayor of Sisters. I am representing the Central Oregon Act. I did put in, I had no conflicts of interest. I didn't realize Sisters Eagle Airport was an applicant. So I will just mention that because it is within the city of Sisters. However, I've had no communication with the owners of that airport at all about this. So I just wanted to put that out there on the record as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, next is Linda Tepper.
Hi, Linda Tepper. Most recently, for the last 30 years, I was the airport business manager for the Crater Lake Klamath Regional Airport. I retired at the end of the year, but I did take on a new position as executive director for the Oregon Airport Management Association. So still getting to work with airports, but I represent the South Central Act.
Great, thank you, Linda. All right, next we've got Roger Craddock. Oh, Roger, we can't, or I can't hear you.
I don't think anybody can hear him.
Yeah, Roger, we're not hearing you. Can you hear us? Yeah, we're not getting any sound from you. A couple other people have mentioned that in the chat and they've logged off and logged back on. So I'm not sure if that's helped. You could definitely try that if you wanted to, or of course, you should be able to use the chat. All right, so we'll wait, see if that works for Roger, and we'll go on to Rory Rowan.
Hi, I'm Rory Rowan, Transportation Division Manager at the City of Corvallis. We own, manage Charlie Victor Oscar CVO Municipal Airport. And my first year on the ARC, I think I'm a representative for Cascades West, I believe is ACT. Is how I was kind of asked over the summer. I was temporarily faking my way through being our airport manager, so it was good experience. I think my name might be on our core applications as the contact, but fortunately we do have a new airport manager in place as of October, Ryzen Pereira. And then prior to about 3 years ago, I was at the City of Bend for a number of years, but not necessarily involved directly in airport work there. I tend to have a lot of different things going on, about 30 staff, transit, maintenance, street maintenance, all of the good transportation stuff, of which airport is of course a core thing in our area. But thanks for allowing me to participate.
Great, thanks so much, Rory. And Rory was also one of our new ARC members this year, and I forgot to mention Jason also was one. So we appreciate having both of you on our committee this year. And then Roger, are you able?
Shall we try it again?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Roger Craddock, the Executive Director of the Southwest Oregon Regional Airport. Relatively new to aviation, about 2.5 years here at the airport. Prior to that, I had 30 years with the city of Coos Bay. As to potential conflicts of interest, we do have 2 applications in, although I would disclose that I don't financially benefit either way, whether they're approved or disapproved.
Great, thanks so much, Roger. And again, yes, thank you everybody for submitting your conflicts and for bringing them up here if relevant. And as most of our ARC members have a nexus to aviation, to an airport, or an airport manager, the way that we've handled this in ARC meetings is that if it does come to a point where one of the airports that you may have a conflict with comes up for a vote in any way, then you will just abstain from that vote. If the airports are being voted on as a group, for instance, say all priority 1 airports, it's okay for you to participate in those votes. It's just abstaining on the individual airport votes. All right, and I'll go ahead and start with our presentation here. So all of you did participate, of course, in our cohort meetings last week. And so I didn't want to repeat too much information from the short presentation that I gave then, but I did want to give just a quick overview again on our grant program and talk about the ARC's responsibility and recommendation in this meeting. So just to start off with, the Critical Oregon Airport Relief or Port Grant Program was established by the legislature in 2015, and it is funded by aviation fuel tax. It's governed by Oregon Revised Statute 319.023, and the rules for the program are found in OAR 738-124. The grant program is set up so that the applications or the projects are applied for in 3 different priorities, and then the grants are approved within those priorities. So priority 1 applications are grants that assist airports with match requirements for FAA grants. So those are projects that also receive FAA funding, and those applications all receive first funding from the program. The next one is a priority 2 grants, which are for emergency preparedness and infrastructure projects in accordance with the Oregon Aviation Plan or Oregon Resiliency Plan, Oregon Resilience Plan. And those ones are funded next after the priority 1. And then finally, our priority 3 grants for aviation related economic development. And those are the ones that are funded last. Our first grant cycle was held in 2016, and there were 31 applications approved for about $1.68 million in core funding. That has just increased every cycle since then. And so combined so far in the first 9 cycles of the grant program, we've provided over $20 million for 254 projects at 46 of the public use airports in Oregon. So we are currently in core cycle 10, which is 2025-26. We had our application cycle in October and received 66 eligible applications. There's a total project cost of those applications of a little over $99 million. The total funding request was a little over $5.8 million, and our total available funding is $3.5 million. And then you just see our little timeline over here again that we completed our internal reviews at the end of last year. We are currently doing our ARC review meetings, and then the State Aviation Board approval will happen at the February 5th Aviation Board meeting. So we'll go over the Aviation Review Committee really quickly. The ARC, again, is comprised from 1 from each Area Commission on Transportation, established by the State Aviation Board, and reviews core applications to determine ranking for distribution of grant funds. Again, the applications were scored using criteria found in the Oregon Revised Statute 319.023, and that was the criteria that you all scored the applications on last week. The ARC breaks any scoring ties for application ranking and then finally prepares a list of applications to present to the State Aviation Board. The review and scoring criteria established by the legislature, found in the statute, and then also in the statewide impact form of the core grant application. And so you all scored those applications based on these 6 questions here. You based the scoring for the criteria on the meets the standard, somewhat meets the standard, and does not meet the standard. And then I sent you all out the list of the applications as they were scored. And so today, in putting together the ARC recommendation to the Aviation Board, what you'll be looking at in order to create that list is first, of course, the application scores. If there are any questions in looking at how you want to spread out the funding, you can also look at these other criteria, which these are found in the Oregon Administrative Rules. And so you can also take into consideration the applicant that can bear the most cost, so the highest sponsor match. Projects that are related to safety and infrastructure may be recommended above other types of projects. The quantity of projects applied for at an airport within the same grant cycle. So this question did come up a couple times in the cohort meetings regarding the applicants that have multiple applications. And so there are several in priority 1 and priority 3. So that is something that the ARC can take into consideration when they're looking at the ranking and the distribution of funds. So, for example, as the State Aviation Board approved the grants last year, they approved $150,000 per applicant per priority, rather than approving each amount requested in the grants. That's a way to look at it if you want to look at the quantity of projects applied for and maybe spread some funding out. As a reminder, when it comes to the priority 1 projects, those are funded before priority 2 and priority 3. So there is not any project that is the priority 1 that is not eligible for funding. But if the applicant has multiple applications, you may look at limiting their funding per application. And then lastly is the regional significance of the airport and/or project.
Are you going to at least poll the committee on how they feel about funding multiple grants at one airport versus spreading this out? I'd like to offer that I feel very strongly about that. We don't have that much money. I mean, there's $3 million and considerably more ask. And there's an equity issue for me in one airport getting multiple awards and some getting none.
Exactly. And that's why we have that additional criteria. And that is going to be something that you'll discuss once we get into that portion of the meeting. I'm sure that will be a big point of discussion. So we'll just get through the last couple of slides here. So just to talk about the core grant funding. So we used to have a stipulation in the Oregon Administrative Rules that allowed an applicant to request more than the minimum $150,000 listed as the maximum core grant amount. And we did in the past have some additional funding just due to some different funding sources that became available during the pandemic. And so we were able to approve some applications at up to $250,000. But due to the increase in grant funding requests over the life of the program, for instance, the beginning of the program, there was maybe 30 applications, and now we're double that. We're looking at over 60 in this cycle. Part of that, we believe that there are so many applications is because in the last few years, airports have had the additional funding provided to airports by the bipartisan infrastructure law through the FAA. That funding ends in 2026. So this cycle is most likely the last one that we'll see projects that are related to BIL. And then, of course, project costs have increased substantially since 2016 when the first grant cycle started. So we decided to limit the $150,000 max, not allow requests for any more than that currently, just to keep things even across all applicants, we did have some issues last year where there were airports who requested more, and then there were airports who didn't realize they could have requested more. And so we just really wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion there. And then also, again, try to spread the program funds as far as we're able to. And then we did make some updates to the State Aviation Board approval. And again, this came from last year and how the board approved the grants. Typically, they have approved in the past cycles the list that the ARC has recommended. Last year was the first year in quite a while that we weren't able to fund every application that had been applied for. And so the board really wanted to be able to fund as far down into the application list as they could. So rather than funding every request at what they applied for, they limited it to $150,000 per applicant per priority. So if an applicant had 2 applications totaling $250,000 in priority 1 and 2 totaling $150,000 in priority 2, they had to decide how they wanted to split the $150,000 between the approved applications. So this is a way to approve them that has always been allowed by our rules, but it's never been really spelled out or clear. So in our update to our administrative rules last year, we'd added some language in there that described the criteria that the board uses for approval, which is the same criteria that the Aviation Review Committee uses. So the OAR and the statute criteria. And then we put into place a written approval process for the board. So if they want to approve the list differently than the ARC has recommended, we'll actually have them fill out a form specifically stating the justification based on the rule and statute. That way, it will just help provide a better understanding to the applicants on how it was approved, and hopefully just kind of set a little better expectation, not throw any surprises out there like there was last year. And again, that aligns the ARC board review based on the same criteria. All right, so we are ready to take a look at the applications and get into the discussion. So for this portion of it, we pretty much leave this up to the ARC, and Shelley, as the ARC chair, can help lead off those conversations. So basically what you'll do is you'll take a look at the application list. I'll put them up on the screen here, and then you can decide whether you want to look at whether it's limiting the funding or looking at how you want to rank those to present to the State Aviation Board. And really quickly, before we start all that, do any of the ARC members have any questions?
I have one clarification, just out of curiosity, because I am new. The Dallas Airport is actually technically in Washington, so I'm just curious of how that is included in Oregon. I'm sure it's all above board. I just kind of want to know a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah. I mean, it is a pretty unique situation because, yes, it is located in Washington, but it is jointly owned by Washington and Oregon. And I will admit that I don't know the whole history of how it ended up that way. But because they are considered an Oregon public use airport, they are eligible for program funds. All right, I don't see any other questions right now, but definitely, of course, feel free to ask them as you're going through these applications. And Shelley, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
I actually do have a question. Betsy. Do you guys crosshatch any of these awards with Connect awards?
Yes, and applications that receive or projects that receive Oregon funding are also eligible to receive core funding, but that is something also that the ARC can take into consideration because they are receiving funds for another grant program.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at priority one. For some of the new people, the bill money during COVID, the FAA distributed, set up a program to distribute money to airports to help them survive during COVID. And I'm sorry, my voice is hoarse because I've been dealing with the flu. Um, so we are, as Andrea said, we are coming down to the last release of that funding. However, for the next 3 years, the funding does, you can hold that funding for up to 3 years. So it'll start trailing off, but we'll still see a little bit filtering through the next couple of years. That being said, it's still FAA money. It's still priority one money. So they are funded first, but that is why you see a lot of airports that have more than one grant. They may have an FAA AIP program grant for infrastructure, but they're also able to utilize the bill or IIJA money to help with less restrictive infrastructure, which is why we have so much money requested in the priority one. It's very hard to try and make sure that we are able to fund all the priorities. So priority one is probably our toughest discussion. So normally the way we look at it first is we look at tiebreakers. And it looks like, from what I can see, Andrea, we have 1, 2, 3 tiebreakers in priority one.
There's
But
actually one more on the second page. Oh, well, those are both Redmond, so never mind.
okay. And I am open. Linda, you've been here as long as I have been. Does anyone have a preference on how we look at it first?
Well, I'm just going to renew my concern that that an airport, let's just take Redmond, that's my old home airport, that they could end up with 3 grants and suck up a huge amount of money, and others will get nothing. And I just the fairness of that kind of pushes me the wrong way.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Particularly because Redmond has been so successful in getting grants. Back in the Carrie Novick days, when she trapped Ron Wyden in the newly built tower and locked his staff out until he promised to give her a grant. I mean, that's a little bit hyperbolic, but that woman could get a grant out of a rock, and they have done very, very, very well in grants.
I remember those days. Linda, looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to spread the wealth. On the other hand, it does seem like the core grant, one of the priorities was to leverage those FAA dollars as much as possible. So under the priority one, if that is really the priority that is given under the core grants, I don't know that if that's going to be our priority is to leverage those other grants federal, then I don't know that I'm real comfortable with eliminating somebody just because they are getting a lot of federal grants. It seems like that's a boon to the state to be able to leverage those. I do believe when it comes to the priority 2 and 3 projects, that's where we have the opportunity to look at an airport that has maybe received priority 1 grants, or, is getting ranked, and evaluate whether if they have a project under 2 and 3, whether they should also be getting those, grant awards from this core project if they are receiving grants under priority 1 projects. So
I agree with that.
Thanks, Jeff. I agree. my first thought is, one of the things we are tasked to do is to break the ties. So if we look at the 3 ties, is that correct, Andrea? I didn't see the one at the second page, but
Sorry, I was muted. It was
oh,
between
yeah,
two red ones.
230.
Two.
Yeah, I see them.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, and really quickly on these. So, and I think this is a little bit of what Linda was trying to communicate as well, that the priority one applications are all required to be funded. So what you're more looking at is the distribution of the funds. So for instance, with Redmond having multiple applications, I believe Florence has a couple. There's a few that have multiple in priority one. It's more determining whether you want to fund all of those at the full amount they've requested, or if you want to look at it that way. When it comes to the ties in priority one, it's not quite as important as in priority three, just because the priority ones are going to be funded. So it's more, I think, looking at the dollar amounts than the scores necessarily for priority one.
So how far down the line do we get if we fund everything until the money runs out?
So you get 3 into the priority threes. That would bring it to 3.4 million.
So
the next
sisters
one-
would be the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that still leaves this many unfunded priority 23 unfunded.
And I believe there was one grant that asked for more than 150,000. Is that correct?
There is not. I believe one application was submitted that way, but since we were updating the rules, we had the applicant change that.
Okay, thank you.
And I wonder one other criteria, and I'm sorry, we're getting away from the tie-breaking conversation, but
That's all right.
also that percentage, right? I think you know,
The match.
if yeah, there's like their project's $3 million and they're asking for 150. If we cut them down 100, that 50,000 is not going to make or break the project, most likely. Where if it was somebody having like a $500,000 project, then that could make or break it. So that's me kind of projecting that. I don't know how valid that is, but just wanted to throw that in there.
So how many airports have multiple priority one? It looks Ken Jensen has 1, 2. Has 2.
I can sort it on here, so it might be a little easier to see. Okay.
In the past, have you taken into consideration projects for which there is no other possible funding?
And those
Yes.
are the priority 2s and 3s. Yeah. Well, typically these are ones that don't have any other funding except from their sponsor.
Or any other state agency or any other anything. I just happen to have looked at that, an underground storage tank removal. I don't know how urgent that is in terms of potential pollution. And would that elevate it to a higher consideration? Or could they get a DEQ grant? I'm just trying to figure out any other sources of funding that would accomplish the task, or not. And if there's an or not, in my mind, that might elevate a project if there was an urgency to it.
I know we've looked at other funding that's part of the budget breakdown. I'm not sure that we've delved that far into whether or not there's other funding available. It may not be known when they applied whether or not there was any other, or there was no other funding, or they chose not to use other funding.
Thank you.
It'd probably be a difficult one to just, I mean, I'm not a grant expert in terms of every grant opportunity or funding source that is out there available to airports or, under different, so I don't know that I'm in the best position to know if an airport who's put in an application has the ability to seek funding from another agency or another opportunity. So that's a little difficult for me to figure out how we would evaluate whether they've exhausted all their other opportunities to seek funding for a project.
Yeah, and that's not anything that we've ever evaluated the grants on or the applications on either. I think it's uh, a little too difficult. The art.
So Andre, could you scroll up to the priority ones airports that have multiple applications? So we know Redmond has 4.
Corvallis has 2. Florence has 2. Kinjernstedt, Hood River has 2. Newport has 2.
Yeah, the screen we're seeing on our shared screen is priority 3.
You're not seeing the
No, it's
spreadsheet?
priority
No.
3 is displayed.
Are you seeing just the regular presentation right now?
No, we were seeing your spreadsheet, but it's only showing us priority 3. There,
Oh,
perfect.
there it goes.
Oh, you know what? I think it's like lagging because let me stop sharing and reshare because I moved it and then you guys said you could see it. So might be lagging a bit. All right. Are you seeing the priority ones now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So now, is
So
there
there's-
any way to pinpoint the ones that are AIP money versus bill money or IIJA?
I didn't mark that down on any of our sheets and it doesn't pull that in our reporting.
Okay. So I agree. I mean, we're tasked with funding priority 1 first. But I do agree we need to find a way to.
And I guess what I'm looking at is that of the priority 1 applications that are multiple from one airport, most of them, with the exception of Redmond, most of them are asking for relatively small dollars. So, Redmond is their 2 applications combined are less than, say, $50,000 versus Redmond is the one where we essentially are seeing 4 applications and they total, upwards of $500,000. So to that question of whether the ARC has the ability to maybe reduce some of those $150,000 down a bit, I guess I know in past ARCs, that's always kind of, we felt like a little bit of a shaky ground in terms of how do we adjust those dollars down and what's our reasoning for picking a new number for that. So
The other thing is whether or not you're throwing somebody drowning 10 feet offshore, 6 feet of rope. I want to make sure that you don't, by just arbitrarily reducing the size of a grant, cripple the project.
yeah. And if, for instance, just theoretically, if we reduce down any of the grant awards that they've been asking for in priority 1, say we reduce a number of them and gain an additional $100,000, where does that take us? Does it move the needle on any of the awarding priority 3 projects, or we know that with the existing funding that we've got, we can fund all the way through priority 2 and into priority 3. But if the next priority 3 project is for more money than we gain, then again, we're not really moving the needles. So
Well, you might have a partial grant to them with the
Yeah.
money that was recaptured.
yeah. So like
Well, if we were to capture, let's say $200,000 additional, how far down the list does that take us?
it looks like
So-
then, sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
I was
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
say, so yeah, there's about
Okay.
80,000 left, or I'm sorry, we were at 3 point. Yeah, that's about 80,000 left to bring it to the 3.5. So we'd need an additional 70,000 just to bring us to this next one down. And then we've got 124 there. So basically 200,000 would bring us about 2 down.
We just need more money in the state.
So Andrea,
Everybody does.
how did that play out last year when the State Aviation Board cut everybody down to 150,000 in each priority?
There were several applications in priority 1 and I think in priority 3 that had asked for $250,000. So cutting down to the 150,000 per applicant, it did let us fund like all but 3 of the priority 3s last year. And I can't remember how far down it had gone into the priority 3s before doing that, but I'm sure it was just a couple in like this year. That's pretty typical. So we were able to stretch it. I will say though, we do have quite a bit more priority 3 than we have in past years also.
So
Yeah,
if
and
we
if I-
look at, go ahead.
If I may, I believe our rules state that priority 1 get funded first. I don't think that is something that we can change on this committee. With that being said, if this is something that we all agree on, perhaps we make a recommendation to the board for future rule changes and or our recommendation to not fund or to limit the number of airports funded at the $150,000 max, similar to what they did last year. And then they justify that on their end. I mean, they did that last year. They limited to the 150 in each priority for each airport. Airports can apply for what they have going on, but our role, I mean, we just can't change the rules on this committee as far as what the ORS states that has to be funded first. Doesn't mean we have to accept it and be quiet about it. It simply means that we make that as part of our recommendation to the Oregon Department of Aviation Board.
I agree. The only reason I'm somewhat hesitant is because the bill money, IIJA, whichever you want to call it, is money available to some airports that normally don't see any grant funding. So you want to make sure that you do. I mean, it is still, the biggest bang for your buck when you have FAA match funding. So you don't want to eliminate the possibility for an airport to receive that funding. But you're right. How do we do that? I agree with you. Having Redmond having 4 grants,
I mean, it almost eats up $500,000 out of 3.5. That's
even for me, and I'm a grant hog, I'll be the first to admit that I apply for grants. I figure the worst case scenario, they say no. I'm okay with that. But 4 is a lot. 4 is a lot.
Andrea, can you
4's
scroll
not a
back
lot
up?
if it's not $500,000, right?
True, if it's small. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I say, Andrea, will you scroll back up to priority 1? Thank you.
And you're right, we're tasked with funding priority 1 first, with a caveat that we can make a recommendation to the State Aviation Board. I wasn't very happy with what they did last year, but I think it worked out. They had the foresight to make it work, and it has. I don't know that there was too many that were hurt by that. We had to adjust, but there was still the funding available.
I would add to that in that I did not care. Hood River Airport was when it was limited to 150 per priority, that definitely crippled the Hood River Airport in their projects and had to go back looking for additional ways to fund FAA funded dollars, both IAJ and AIP. Because the 150 was split across two very substantial grants from the FAA. But I really do feel that the funding of these priority one grants at the best level we can is very important. I think that really does need to be the priority. And I do agree. I mean, that the Redmond is a huge ask. I don't say that lightly in the fact that I've had some huge asks for the airports I represent as well, but it's leveraging dollars that we're not going to have in this state if we don't make sure they can get it. Redmond has been very successful, so I do agree with you, Shelley, or Betsy, in that they've had some fantastic wins, but I really do feel like it's important to make sure we fund all these, and maybe not at the full 150 in that example. I mean, if we pulled back on some of the asks, we can go further.
Me personally, I do agree that the priority one projects, those are important. I do like the thought when we've got a situation where Redmond or any airport has got multiple asks under priority one, it is sucking up a lot of funds. So I would like to see the aviation board address that going forward, but I'm uncomfortable just as an ARC kind of arbitrarily reducing down asks under the grant kind of midway through the project. I think it's a policy decision that the board should address in terms of how to kind of spread the wealth out more when you've got multiple grants requests under things. So for this year, I guess I'm comfortable, or my preference would be to just fund the priority one grants as listed with the cap of 150,000 and make a recommendation to the board that they really should give some look in terms of how to spread the priority one wealth out further down the list. In future years, if there's an airport that's going to have, like Redmond this year, 4 different grant requests under priority one that suck up a lot of funds.
Well
Just for-
said.
Just for clarity, Linda, you said with a max of 150, is that 150 per project or 150 total for the airport?
And 150 per project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now most of Redmond's, and I'm just plain devil advocate, they're for terminal buildings. Aren't there other funding sources available for that type of construction? PICs, other types. I mean, we don't usually see that kind of application. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember seeing some of the smaller airports that have no other way to update their FBO building. Well, even the city of Eugene has expand terminal building phase 5.
I think
Am
it
I
is
just
very
not-
unique. I think it's very unique this year that Redmond is getting so many separate grants from the FAA for their terminal project. I mean, I think it's more commonly that you would see one grant from the FAA to cover a specific project, but I'm sure there's probably, because there's different funding coming from different pots, and the FAA does like to issue a grant for a specific funding pot, but It's a little unusual that we didn't see like maybe 2 grants from Redmond, both for maybe the terminal building project. But 4 is definitely unique, I think.
Is it, process here, is it, like in the case of Redmond, let's just use them again. You know, the projects are very similar and, I mean, do we know for sure that the FAA grants were separate grants? Or or can an airport maybe got $100 million grant and they've chopped it up into smaller projects so that it could leverage the most state dollars? Is there a gatekeeper for preventing that from happening?
Yes, according to the program rules, we only approve 150,000 per project unless it's a phased project. And when it comes to the FAA ones, they do have to have the separate FAA grant for the phase. And so that was the first thing we checked on when we saw those with Redmond, and they have provided us with all of the separate FAA grants for it. So they actually did get that many different ones.
So Andrea, according to our regulations, we have to fund. It's not up to us to pick and choose which ones in priority 1 that we fund. We are to review them, review the scores, my understanding, work on the ties. We could move one project up, one project down for good reasoning, but we really can't say we shouldn't fund any of the priority 1. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So maybe that's the way we look at it. We look at the scores, we understand. I don't know that it makes any difference though, if we move all the priority 1s, their first grant up to the top, regardless of the scores. And then, but if we have to fund them, it's just a useless exercise. Because we're tasked with funding them first. I like Linda's idea that we rank them as they are because we're tasked with funding the priority 1. But we explain to the State Aviation Board our request and let them make the hard decision whether or not they're going to cap an airport again, because they have the ability, we don't, if I understand correctly. But
So
suggest to
can,
them. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you can recommend the lower funding amounts. That's part of that additional criteria. Let's see if I can get it back up here. That's part of this additional criteria for your recommendation to the Aviation Board.
Right.
So that's one of the criteria that you can consider, is how many applications they do have.
So if we consider how many we have, but we still can't tell them not to fund priority 1.
Right.
So we could look at them if we want to do this exercise and make sure everybody has in priority 1 has 1 grant, and then put the others down below and prioritize them that way and let the State Aviation Board look at how we've done it. The application scores, but also the sponsor that can put the most towards the match. What are your thoughts?
I'll just put my, oh, go ahead.
Jeff was talking, but you're muted.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think all we can do is make a recommendation that we, basically what this conversation has been. I mean, I think we all understand the concern and see the need to hopefully spread it further. But if If our job is to score and rank these, then let's do that. And we can make a recommendation that the board, after last year, we saw what the board is willing to do when they have this, if they have the same idea. I think we might be beating a dead horse if we hang on to this thought too long. We're not going to make the decision. We just need to give our ranking and our thoughts and give a discussion item to the board.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to just put my idea on the table one more time. Because there are a lot of these priority 3 ones, you know, I mean, I agree with Betsy that there's especially rural areas that desperately need this money and could leverage it well in their communities. So, you know, makes me a little upset that we can't really touch most of these at the bottom, but if we can get a little more, and that would be just obviously reducing some of the asks and maybe looking harder at the, you know, the airports of the grants that are the multi-million-dollar grants. And please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just feeling like if somebody has $20 million grant and we're 150,000, if we cut that down to 100 and free up 50,000 for some other project, I don't think that's going to shut down that $20 million project. But please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to find a way to just mine a few other dollars to get a few more people at the bottom of the list funded for some of these projects.
I don't think you're wrong. I see exactly where you want to go.
So Andrea, can we reduce the amount we award in priority 1?
Yeah, so you can, just as the board approved last year, you can make a recommendation like that.
I guess I have a small concern with that. And I do like the idea of pushing as much funding down, but I will say, you know, priority 3 projects have been designated as priority 3 projects just because they were not wanting to, state wasn't emphasizing those as much. And as an airport that used to put through multiple grant applications, I will say that oftentimes your priority 3 project was a little bit of a Hail Mary of, you know what, if I got the funding, I would move forward with this project, but it's not a critical project for our airport. Priority 1s and 2s are. But again, I'll throw in a priority 3 project just because, heck, if they've got the funding, I'll take it. So I'm a little concerned about taking money from a priority 1 project to fund a priority 3 project without really, you know, it's hard to know what that project is and how critical it is for that airport compared to something that is a priority 1 project. But I am a strong believer of trying to push funding out to as many airports as possible. I just think it should be probably a policy decision that's set before the grant process starts by the board.
So I am understanding, I mean, there's several people on that have not spoken. Does anyone want to comment? Something we're not seeing? Thinking outside
Well,
the box?
I'll make a couple comments. During the last process, we were one of the airports that benefited from the board's decision to limit some of the funding. Our project wasn't originally in the list to be funded, but we did get funded and it made an impact. This time, I'm one of those ones that have 2 grants in. And I do support limiting some of the funding so that we can spread it across and make a greater benefit to more airports. I think, as I understand the process, we're required to fund the tier 1, and we should do that and then make our recommendation of how we want, if we want to have that funding affect more airports by limiting those with multiple applications like myself on their funding award.
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, I mean, we can discuss this. It's 11 o'clock. We can discuss this forever, but I think we come back to the same conclusion is we're tasked with scoring and prioritizing tier 1 first to be funded, and then tier 2, and then tier 3, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. I think what I would suggest is that we accept the priority 1 ranking as presented, with the caveat that we request that Oregon Department of State Aviation Board look at the airports with multiple grants and adjust for their ability, so that some of more priority 3 grants could be awarded. I don't think we have that ability in our as ARC members, but I think we can ask that the State Aviation Board look at those and adjust those as necessary, so that more priority 3 grants could be funded.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Shelley. I think our recommendation that, if everybody agreed as an ARC, we love to see that the funds be dispersed to a greater number of airports. And so we would be okay if the board wanted to take take a second look at the applications and adjust. I think that's a good recommendation to make.
I agree.
I agree.
I'm just taking others' leads. I feel like this is my first year. I think you've all made good good rationale for what you're saying, and I'm trying to listen and learn, but I don't have more opinion. I'll just state it that way.
And Andrea, we still need to, even though the priority ones are mostly givens, we still need to break those ties, right?
Not necessarily, unless you want to say like you think one of the projects is more important, so maybe you don't think that one should be reduced. So it just kind of depends on, I think, how far you want to get into that.
I would suggest that at this point, it appears we have consensus on a direction.
I know we've kind of beat this horse quite a bit, but and maybe we don't want to continue, but I was just looking at these grants, and could part of our recommendation be to fund the Redmond Phase 3 and Phase 4? And should the board decide to fund all priority 1 projects, then of course they'll be funded. But I guess, how strongly do we feel about funding the 4 phases applied for with Redmond? I guess we want to make sure our message is clear to the board, and if we don't share with them what our thoughts are, they're not going to know.
I feel very strongly about it. And to put an exclamation point, Redmond is big enough that they have professional staff that can write these grants. They're on the lookout for them. They have a track record of doing this. And looking at some of the rest of the list, I'm concerned that they don't have the depth of staff that allows them to promulgate, $450,000 asks.
I agree with you, Betsy. So I guess just to pose the question to the group, are we leaning towards a recommendation of recommending funding all priority 1 projects, or are we leaning towards the recommendation of funding all priority 1 projects, excluding Redmond Phase 4 and 5. Excuse me. Redmond phase 5 and 6.
And I believe, according to the guidelines, we don't have the ability to not fund priority ones. I think what we can do is say we accept the scoring that's there from the reviews. However, that we suggest no more than 2 priority grants per airport, if that's the way you want to look at it.
Yeah, I was looking at the
Be
dollar
funded.
amounts. Yeah, I was looking at the dollar amounts of the other airports in priority 1 that had multiple projects, and they're not $500,000 total. So yeah, but Shelley, you're right. I mean, we're tasked with accepting the scoring, accepting the applications, and communicating properly what our recommendation is.
And I think
So,
there's a, oh,
go
excuse
ahead.
me.
Go ahead, Betsy.
I think there's a difference between a philosophical recommendation versus selecting Redmond out for some kind of unique treatment. I agree with the last speaker. I think we're kind of stuck with the rules the way they are right now, but make a recommendation to the aviation board that this needs to be reviewed because some airports are getting skunked while others are getting deeply enriched because they know how to game the system. That seems a little pejorative. Let's not say it that way. That they are experts in understanding the core process.
We can just share our observation and make a recommendation and move forward.
Yeah.
I agree. And just ask the State Aviation Board to review the airports that have multiple grants on whether or not to fund all of those grants. I mean, they have the ability to say yay or nay. We do not.
Andrea, did they review this video prior to judgment?
I would like to say yes, but I don't 100% know if they do watch the
I mean,
video.
I think the temperament of this would be well expressed if they were to review what we're all expressing, and that there's no ill intent in any of these decisions. It's just trying to do the best for the greater good.
And to
Yes.
look at the smaller airports that need this funding so desperately, which is part of the reason this funding came about, is so that the smaller airports that have no other ability to receive grant funding for infrastructure, this is a way for them, and everybody pays it. Everybody that fills up with fuel helps support all the airports. And I think you, when you give your report, we can work on the message to make sure that they understand that this was a struggle because there were several airport priority 1 grants, however well intentioned, is a stranglehold for some of the smaller grants that really are in dire need of that funding.
And I
Well,
would like to add.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right, thank you. I would like to add to that recommendation of, I'm just gonna push my agenda here one more time, of the option of either maybe not funding them, but I feel like they should be funded because they have to have $8. This is the rules as they are this year. However, really highlighting that, also the ability of limiting their award. They can be awarded, just maybe not for their full ask. If it's, an airport that has multiple asks or things like that. I just want that to be in the messaging as well as another tool that could be used at their discretion.
Thank you.
And I was just going to say, with all that discussion, I would move to approve recommend approval of priority 1 applications as presented.
I'll second
I
that.
would second that move.
Okay, we have a first from Haley, and I saw Jeff first, a second from Jeff. All in favor? Andrea?
Really quickly, what we'll do, we'll do a roll call vote. So I'll just call each of the
Perfect.
ARC members' names and you can say yay or nay. So we'll start with our ARC chair, Shelley Humble,
Yay.
Betsy Johnson,
Aye.
Haley Walker,
Yay.
Jason Snyder,
Yes.
Jeff Renard,
Yay.
Jennifer Letts,
Yay.
Linda Tepper,
Yes.
Roger Craddock,
Yes.
and Rory Rowan.
Yay.
Right? And any nays? All right, so that motion for the priority 1 recommendation has passed. So we can look at the priority 2. There's just 2 here.
I'd move we fund both of the priority 2s.
I would second
I'd
that
second that.
motion.
So we had Betsy with the first and Linda with the second. Is that what I saw? Any other discussions?
No.
All right, I'll go ahead and do the roll call vote then. Shelley Humble,
Aye.
Betsy Johnson,
Aye.
Haley Walker,
Aye.
Jason Snyder,
Yes.
Jeff Renard,
Yay.
Jennifer Letts,
Aye.
Linda Tepper,
Aye.
Roger Craddock,
Aye.
and Rory Rowan.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, so the priority 2 recommendation has passed. So now the fun part of our priority 3s.
And what you've said is we can get down to, is it sisters?
Yeah, I gotta re-sort those. So yes, these 3 are the 3 that fall above the cut line.
And can we consider making a partial funding request? You said there was a few dollars left over that would take us down a little bit to fund Miller Memorial Air Park for a partial grant if we needed to or wanted to.
Yeah, there is about 80,000 left of the 3.5 million.
On this one, I think it is important we have, I mean, the top 2 projects are tied at 253. But we do have ties, well, 2 of them are Burns. And then at 220 and then 2 at 205, which is one is Burns and one is Sportsman Air Park. And I agree, the top 2 probably don't matter. They should be safe as far as being funded. But it could, Burns again is another one that has 4 and priority 3. And they're big asks for all of them. I guess I would go back to the same conversation we had with priority 1, is that if funding becomes available to be able to ensure that each airport in priority 3 receives a grant before we fund a second grant for another airport for the same airport.
That seems to treat the category 3s differently than the other categories. Maybe I just don't understand what you said.
Well, I'm just looking at the fact that there are 4 Burns municipal airport grants in this one, and if we're really trying to scratch the surface and get priority 3 funded, and it's part of our criteria, we can look at how many grant applications the airport has. So I would like to see as many individual airports get a grant first before we give an airport 4 grants. Does that make sense?
Everybody gets one before they get 2.
Correct.
I guess one of my questions might be, though, if I were an airport and I had 3 priority or multiple priority 3 grant applications, and maybe only one of those was going to get funded, I might have a preference. You know, I might like to be asked of if you've only got one that you can get a grant for, which is the one. Now that kind of doesn't address the issue of the scoring of the grants. So obviously the act has felt like there are grants that are projects that are better than others, but you know, I guess it is a kind of a question to how do you weigh into which project might have a higher priority if you were to ask the airport. So
I think in the applications for Burns and Twin Oaks, they both ranked their asks in their applications.
I would lean towards, we've put the time in as a group to score these, and I would be weighing off of the score as I work through that thought.
Yeah, like Jennifer said, I mean, just to Linda's, point, I believe some of these applicants put in their applications that what their preference of projects were in order.
This is definitely hard because right now we have enough funding for Sisters and possibly partial funding for Miller Memorial Airport. So do we leave the scoring as provided and
I guess
just deal with the
I'll add my first comment here, and that is that I'm not necessarily a big fan of the partial unless the group can use it. I would tend to probably favor going down and finding the highest priority one that the money fits and trying to get that project actually done, unless we're really confident that that other airport can actually use half of a grant and do something with it or do the project. I mean, that's really what we're saying, right? Like they've got to get the project done. So I like that. For me, with where you're at on this, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of decisions to make. There's a couple projects at the top that are going to get funded, and then if the real question is what do you do with the remaining partial, I would at least ask the rest of the team to consider that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Andrea, can you remind us what we've done in the past in that scenario where there's a little bit of leftover funding? Do we cut project funding and say, if you can find the rest, you've got this much, or do we move down the line to find the next project that the funding fits that project?
Since I've been with the program, we haven't done either of those things. And I don't know if it just because it happens that the funding came closer to, what our allowable funding was, or the grant asks came closer to what the allowable funding was. But typically it's just the approved and going down the list until we get to one that can't be fully funded.
It seems like we should be prioritizing the ranking, breaking some ties, shoring up that process, because we did, we're going to send forth a narrative, to the board, giving them some options of maybe freeing up some dollars. So the dollar amount might change after this leaves the meeting. So it seems like the best opportunity would just make sure that the rankings are where we want them. And let them, kind of get down to the last dollars.
I agree,
I
Jennifer.
agree.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
We've all put a lot of time in on this scoring and ranking, and I think that we can't just throw that out the window.
I agree. And who knows, State Aviation Board may change it.
Yeah.
So do you
Um,
think tie breaking now? I mean, Shelley, is
Yes.
that what's kind of on
Yeah.
our radar?
I think so. So our first ones are the first two. They're both at 253. They should be funded, but if we're gonna tie break, we might as well. We should probably follow through and tie break all the grants. So if you look at our criteria, well, they were exactly the same for the application scoring and the ACT scoring, which is not usual, but okay.
Is the purpose of breaking the tie to eliminate one of them or to change the order in which they appear?
Change the order, move one up over the other.
Okay.
So really it doesn't, it's kind of a moot point for the first two, we think. I mean, nothing's
And-
set in stone until the aviation board rules. So if you look at our criteria, the application scores are the same, the ACT scores are the same. The match, George Felt has 18%. Is that correct? Am I looking at the right?
Andrea, could you put it back up on the screen?
That is correct.
Okay.
Compared
And
to 7.
Twin Oaks has 7, although the amounts are definitely different. I would leave, my opinion would be to leave George Felt Airport as number 1 in the priority, and Twin Oaks is number 2. It's open
I
for
don't have a
discussion.
huge opinion, but I would say that removal of trees approaching into the safety zones of the approach to the airport is probably, safety issues are probably a higher priority for me than runway surfaces and upgrades, although I really believe strongly in maintaining your surfaces, your runways and stuff, but I guess I would just give 1 extra point for removal of potential safety hazards.
I agree.
So I will just add, since Twin Oaks is in my county and I actually literally drive past the end of the runway every time I drive to the county for a meeting, this is a real issue. Like visibly, very clearly, actually causes me a little angst when I drive by it. Just to add that.
Any recommendation?
That argument sways me pretty hard.
So I'm hearing that there is thought that we should put Twin Oaks as the number 1 project in priority 3. Is that my understanding?
Yes, I would agree.
I'll make that motion if you're looking for an actual motion.
Do we need a motion, Andrea?
Well, do you want to wait till you go through all of them and
Sure.
then just do one motion?
Sure.
That way you don't have to
Sure.
keep making multiple.
That's fine. So I have Twin Oaks first, George Felt second. Our second tiebreaker comes down under both are Burns Municipal Airports. And I know that they said I'm not sure which one they said was more of a priority for them. I believe it's in their applications. And I know I was one of the reviewers, so I'm trying to remember.
Get them pulled up here.
So we're looking at fuel system repairs and storage building phase 1.
I would just ask the question, how much Burns is used for firefighting aircraft, helicopters and fixed wing? Only because some of those Eastern Oregon airports are are terribly important in having adequate fuel in response to conflagration.
And Burns did put in the application that the 0005 is the top choice for their
Yes.
priority 3.
I just saw that one.
Thank you. Then that ought to speak volumes.
So we would put 0005 as the top for the tiebreaker on that one. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
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 The next tiebreaker comes down to 205 are the score, and it is Burns Municipal Airport pavement maintenance and Sportsman Air Park, SAI Pappy fencing signage project. So I'm not sure.
Well, if we were just to think about it in terms of potentially spreading the wealth, I would bump Sportsman's Air Park above the Burns because Burns already got 3 more applications above it. So
Agreed.
kind of an arbitrary
agree.
way to score that, but
Agreed.
I agree. Any other comments, concerns? And then the last 2 tie is application score 174. And that is Columbia Gorge Regional Airport and Seaside. And I hate these negative scores. It's not necessarily, it's just the way the questions work. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad project.
I see that Columbia Gorge has 2 priority 3 projects at least above. Does Seaside have any additional grant applications in? There's 3 of them below.
Yeah, Seaside, 51 is another Seaside. Line
I
51.
see. Thanks. So Columbia has 3. Seaside has 2 above them, so they're almost equal in terms of the number of grant applications in the priority 3 projects. So
And as we currently are situated, neither one of them are going to get funded.
Correct. Well,
I'd make the case for the perimeter funding, knowing as little as I know about that airport, other than it was in my legislative district, and they have such a profound animal problem, mostly elk.
agree with Betsy. Choosing a safety project is probably a gets bonus points.
And I don't know who's breathing on Columbia Gorge Regional to decommission an underground storage tank. I don't know if it's leaking. I don't know if there are other problems unknown to us, unless one of you has some insight into that application.
So I can say that Columbia Gorge has gotten a new fuel system. So the one that needs to be decommissioned is the old one. And I believe in the application it did talk about the cost of maintenance and repairs of keeping it as opposed to getting it decommissioned.
Of all the things on this list, though, that is one that, I think Betsy's point earlier, might actually be fundable from other places that are not directly in the aviation space.
that's true.
I'd go
Yeah,
for
and
putting Seaside ahead of Columbia Gorge.
Yeah, I agree. I was in the group that reviewed that one, and yeah, I mean that airstrip is very close to development, and they said they're having issues with, people and animals, so wandering on.
I am okay with that.
I'm hoping we don't hear the people one that often. I'm sure that's situational there, but that's frightening.
Does anyone have a problem with having Seaside above Columbia, sorry. Yeah, above Columbia Gorge?
No,
Seeing
No.
none, okay, so that breaks the ties.
All right, so I'll just go through them really quickly and then you all can do motion and we'll do a vote on it. So for the first two, we have Twin Oaks. Let's add it here as the first one, and then you want to put George Felt as the second. Oops. And
Correct.
then the next one, Burns, application 5, you want to keep that as the one above, and application 68 as the second.
Correct.
And then we're at Sportsman Air Park in Burns. And you want to do Sportsman Air Park and then Burns. And for the last one, Seaside application 18, we'd like to put that one above Columbia Gorge application 46.
Correct. Does someone want to make a motion?
I would move the recommendations as just presented.
Thank you, Betsy. Second?
Second.
Who was the second?
But Roger?
Okay.
All right, any other discussion before we do the roll call vote? All right, Shelley Humble,
Aye.
Betsy Johnson,
Aye.
Haley Walker,
Aye.
Jason Snyder,
Yes.
Jeff Renard,
Aye.
Jennifer Letts,
Aye.
Linda Tepper,
Yes.
Roger Craddock,
Aye.
and Rory Rowan.
Aye.
All right, perfect. So you've got through the ranking of the applications by priority. And let me just get my presentation back up. The next thing that we'll do is we will vote for our new ARC chair. So this is who you will elect, who will go to the February 5th board meeting and will present the recommendations to the State Aviation Board. And then if that person is selected by their act to be on the ARC the next year, then just as Shelley's doing this year, that person will be the chair and help guide the discussions. So I'll let you guys
Where
go.
is the February 5th meeting?
It is in Salem at the ODOT T building, and of course also virtual.
Can we move the same chair, given the value of continuity from this discussion to the presentation? And the expectation that they follow through in the next cycle? I don't know what the rules are. I don't know if that's allowed.
Yes, yeah. It can be the same person for multiple years. That's not a problem.
I also don't know if the sitting chair would acquiesce to do that before I put her name in nomination. It might be a courtesy to ask.
I will do that if the board so chooses.
Good, then I would move the nomination of the current chair to go on to the 26-27 ARC chair.
I'll
Second if you
Like-
need one.
Who was the first second? I didn't quite see. Was it Jeff?
Sure.
Or me. I don't know. Jason.
Jason?
But
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think we all agreed.
Shelley, how'd you get so lucky? All right.
I don't know.
We'll go ahead and go around and do the roll call vote on it. So Shelley Humble,
I,
Betsy Johnson,
Aye.
Haley Walker,
Aye.
Jason Snyder,
Yes.
Jeff Renard,
Yes.
Jennifer Lenz,
Aye.
Linda Tepper,
Yes.
Roger Craddock,
Aye.
and Rory Rowan.
Aye.
Perfect. All right. Any nays? All right. So
Thank you, Shelley.
Shelley Humble is our current and next ARC chair. Next, I just wanted to give a quick moment if there were any questions or other items for discussion that the ARC had. And Betsy, I see your hand up.
I have two issues. The first one is who is going to draft the text of our recommendation and who would review that? Is there the opportunity for the committee to see it before it goes to the aviation board just to make sure it's consistent with our discussions?
Yes, definitely. So what I'll do is I'll update the rankings in our grant software system and create the new sheet that shows where those fall. And then I'll work with Shelley on making sure that the recommendations are documented correctly. And we'll send all of that out to you all so you can also verify that. And we'll work on that tomorrow and hopefully get it out early next week. And that will also go to the board, of course, so they can start looking that over before the board meeting.
Cool. And then my second question is, and I ask this respectfully, could you please send out the slides that you had this morning that were the history of the grant program and all of the rankings once you get them readjusted based on our discussion and motions and votes?
Yeah, definitely. I'll send that out to all ARC members, and then we'll also post the ranked list and the video recording of this meeting on our website as well.
Cool. But if you'd send them out individually
Yeah.
so that we're not fishing them off a website, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks so much.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
the only thing I want to say is I want to give a big shout out to Andrea and Ermi and Alex. They make us look good. They make me look good because they get all the documentation together and they're there to look in the weeds if we have any questions. And kudos to you guys. I know it's not an easy job, but you make it look really easy. Thank you. Thank you for your consistency and for your dedication. It means a lot to all of us airports in Oregon that really need the funding. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Thanks so much, Shelley. And yeah, we're just glad that we are able to continue the grant program and just fund as many of these projects as possible. We've definitely seen how important this program is to the airports, so we are happy to keep it going.
And on that note, I'd also like to thank all the ARC members. It's a lot of work to review all those grant applications and take time out when, I mean, I'm the one and only in the airport here, so it's a lot of work, but I really appreciate your due diligence and your willingness to keep our airports going.
And if I may add something, speaking of funding, recently we had a House bill up in the legislature for additional funding for the core grant. Definitely a missed opportunity there. And the folks in this meeting especially see how much the funding makes a difference, how many requests are out there, how many do not get funded. And if I can just prod everyone to reach out to your circles when that funding opportunity becomes available, so we can spread some more across the state of Oregon. I know we could benefit from it. We see who all can benefit from it. So when those opportunities arise, I would just say, let's see what we can do to step up to that challenge for the support.
Whose bill was it? Do you recall?
That is tapping into my memory bank that is not good enough. That's too tough of a test, Betsy, but I bet you we can get you that information.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd like to see that also.
Sounds good. And then definitely reach out to our grants email here if there are any comments, and everyone else who is also on this meeting, if you have any comments before the board meeting, you can send them to this grants at odav.oregon.gov, and we will get those forwarded over to the board and have them included in the February board meeting. And then if there is nothing else from our ARC members, this ARC meeting is complete. We thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thanks all.